and distinguished guests. You know, when I hear that young lady giving the introduction, it reminds me of an American journalist who came to interview me after my victory in 1995. And the last question he asked me was, he said, Prime Minister, first you were a doctor, then you became a lawyer, and now you're Prime Minister. What next? So I quoted what former Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli said about politics. He said, to climb up to the top of the pole, it's a greasy pole. You keep slipping down. And your own people will pull you down as well. But when eventually you reach the top of the greasy pole, the only way is down. There's no other way. And this is what happened to me in 2000. I'm truly delighted to be here to join you today for the launch of this book, Veni Vidi Vici. Participating in such an event, you know, sometimes you have to go to functions and you say, oh my God, I have to write a speech, I have to do this, I have to do that. But this event, I was truly delighted to come. Why? Because it reminds me of the pleasant, it's a feeling of nostalgia when you see your alma mater, many here who were together. It's pleasant memories. I also think, every time I pass next to the Royal College of Cupid, I think of my time, what I did. I won't tell you everything I did, but I remember Mr. Bullen, as Professor Vivier just said, his mere presence, it comes in the class. His mere presence with his piercing eyes will fear you. Yeah. I also remember Mr. Moring too. We used to call him Mr. Potok because he used to hit you with his knuckles on your head. And we had marvelous teachers. I'm glad Professor Serge Vivier mentioned a few. I want to mention as well, because we must be grateful to them. I think I am what I am today because of those teachers. I tell you, like we mentioned him, Georges Petalinel, he was an English and English literature teacher. Such an erudite teacher, I've never felt that again. That you actually want to go in his class. Normally children would run away from class. You want to go in his class. I remember he had a book he was reading in his week called Superchamp. I think by Davis, if I'm not mistaken. Then there was Daniel Kelly. He was a teacher of French and Latin. And he took great pains to make us pronounce the French words. Thanks to him, I got actually second prize, not first, in Latin, in Form 4. Then there was Mr. Jawaye. He was teaching physics. We call him Tilapia because he was short. Then there was Mr. Wanuchi. I decorated him afterwards. You know Mr. Wanuchi was a professor of mathematics. When I had to choose between science and we call classic at the time, I had usually good marks in Latin, in English literature and all this. But I chose science. I chose science because I thought at the time, you know, when you're young, you don't think as you should have with English. I thought Russia had just sent a satellite in space called Sputnik. And I said, what do I need to do with Latin? Science is the way forward. So I chose science, but I didn't know you had to have the slip and sign by your parents. I think some of you must have gone through this. So all my friends chose science. So afterwards, when I got the slip, I said, you must have your parents to sign. I took it to my brother. I said, what? You get second prize in Latin, you get good marks in English, in literature, and you choose science. I I can't say I was average probably. And he threw the piece of paper and said, go and change. But I think some of you know me by now. I didn't change. I thought I'd imitate the signature of my father. They shocked. And I gave it to Mr. Vernon. And he said, hey, Buddha, see, I tried to work there. Oh, baby, I didn't do it properly. See, I tried to work there. I said, yes, if you don't ring him, don't ring him. I think he wouldn't dare ring him. That's good. And, but I was talking about Mr. Waruchi. You know, I don't know, maybe it's the way people are. I always like to do what is more difficult. That is why I chose science. But when I was in lower six, I chose to do additional maths. I can't say I was that good in math, but I chose additional maths. And when I started the course, I was lost. And had it not been for Mr. Waruchi, I don't think I would have passed additional maths. He was really dedicated and made me pass. There's another professor of math, I remember, I think his name was Robert Jr. Mead. They would make you think. You know what he did, Junior did, in the class? He came up, he drew a clock on the blackboard, and then he said, how many of you have watches? Some of us had, some of us didn't. And he said, what is more accurate, your watch or this clock on the board? He wants our watches. He said, no, it's the clock which I've drawn here, which is more accurate. Why? Because twice a day is going to give you the exact time. Your watch will never give you the exact time. I remember Mr. Asarabe, who taught biology. And really, really talented. I think he went to Australia afterwards. And then there was I'm thinking of a few, Mr. Mahmoudal, history teacher. He made you as if you knew the time you were reading. When he was teaching us about Henry VIII and his, 8 wives, I think, you felt what it was like. These are the kind of teachers that we have. And they formed our characters, our formative years. This is the year that you will become what you will become. You know, SSR also referred to his teachers. In one of his biographies called Our Struggle, he refers to them. And I want to quote what he said. Look what he said. This was in the 1915, around that time. He said the British had created a few institutions in Mauritius modeled after the best British ones. But it was the Royal College which served the people most, with its staff of Oxford, Cambridge, and London. They were educated and trained teachers. They were competent. They were experienced. They were dedicated to the cause of education. I just said, Professor Gigi also said about our teachers were very dedicated. But look what SSR said, because it's pertinent from what you said about tuition. He mentioned 2 of his teachers. He said, I was lucky enough to have had as teacher Reverend Fowler, who taught English. He instilled in me a deep and lifelong love for the English language and literature. He had a sense of fairness, tolerance, impartiality, and justice, values which I have adopted. But he also remembered his chemistry teacher, called Mr. Howard. And this is what he said. He was painstaking, honest, disapproving of the common practice of giving private tuition. And SSR had approached him one day for private tuition. And you know what he said? He said, I can't teach you any more than I taught you in class. I would be stealing your father's money. What I teach in class is what I would have taught you anyway. So you can judge for yourself what kind of teachers the Royal College of QP, and I'm sure Royal College of Port used to, which came later. But these educators, they as if lit the candle of curiosity and this love for knowledge in the hearts and minds of the students. That's how we felt. Kindling a passion for learning and lighting that candle that gave freely all their as if energy and life for the students. Totally dedicated and impartial. You know the founding father of Turkey, Kemal Atatürk. This is how he described his own teachers. He said a great teacher is like a candle, consuming himself to light the way for others. It's a great description. I think we do not give enough credit to our teachers. And yet they're so crucial, especially in our formative years. So this is why we must pay tribute to those who have held in trust the stewardship of our college for these past 200 years. I know there's a new rector who was also a student, I believe, from the Royal College. I'm sure he's keeping the level that should be kept. Not only to impart knowledge, but to give the essential values of life. This forms your character. There is nothing more important than the intellectual and moral formation of our young people. Talent, eagerness to learn and to excel, youthful energy, our people have in abundance. These two young people, we have plenty of them, I'm sure. But our nation draws on the strength of so many races, so many cultures, so many religions, that we have no shortage of natural abilities. But natural abilities, as the great philosopher and statesman Francis Bacon said, natural abilities are like natural plants. They need pruning by study. This is what we need. Education remains the bedrock of our nation's progress, and it is essential for us in forging our national destiny. SSR, when I think about it, he must have had it. I don't know, he could see very far, a man of vision. How was it in the 90s? People don't know this. People think we got free education in 1977. He announced it in 1976. Just prior to the election, my friend Amity Dog, I'm sure, must have campaigned that this is an electoral bribe. But in fact, he wanted to have free education in the late 1950s. And the governor at the time, the British governor, said, no, it's not possible, people will start fighting and speak about politics in schools. This is what he said. So it was only in 1977 that it became a reality. But you can ask yourself, why didn't he do it when we got independence in 1968? For precisely the reason that we're having today. There was no money in the coffers. You can't do everything you want to do when you don't have the means to do it. At the time, Mauritius was a monocrop economy. Two Nobel laureates in economics did mustn't be. What did they say? That Mauritius is doomed. It is bound to fail. It has no hope of survival because it produces only sugar and a growing population, high unemployment, and it was subject to the vagaries of cyclones and droughts, which affected our sugar plantations. But let's say something is time. I must tell you something, even in 1970, I witnessed this, even in 1976, when he was wanted to have free education. Many people were against. I remember reading an article, an editorial in Le Moïse. My friend Lindsay would do this. By Henri Masson. You could write beautifully and convincingly. I was a doctor already. But I thought maybe he was right. Because in that article he said, Sassim Sakar, by giving free education, is going to bankrupt this country. We can't afford it. So I went and asked my dad, you took the right decision by giving free education. He said, why are you asking me? I said, I read what only Masson was reading. And many people were criticizing him. He said, look, these people don't have vision. They're looking at it in terms of rupees and cents. This is what will make Mauritius survive. And I want the people of Mauritius to be able to think for themselves. Not believe everything they read. Today on the social media, so many lies are being said. We have to use our head and try to see. So in hindsight, he was good. Somebody asked him, I remember, came from Woodlands, your constituency. I said to him, but you doing all this? But she was going to paint these buildings. Where would you get the teachers from? I remember he often said it. He said, what I want to do is to replace an empty mind with an open one. It's a great saying. Our colleges are the crucibles in which character and aspirations of generations are fashioned or nurtured and are inspired. This is why I have profound respect for those whose calling is to educate the young, and I cherish. I hope you did the same. I don't know. At the time, there were no girls in the college, just boys. But I cherish the great traditions exemplified by the Royal College at the time. And in liberal education, we had a liberal education, which is fundamental if you want to encourage critical thinking and good judgment. But Bacon, I quote Bacon, and Francis Bacon again, what he said. He said, read not to contradict and confuse, nor to believe or take for granted, nor to find talk and discourse, but to weigh and consider. This is the true end of education. You equip and train the mind for rigorous discernment and judgment in the experiences and tasks we must face in life. To teach us to aim higher and choose the noble path, to an ignoble one, honorable path to a dishonorable one. That is why we must endeavor to encourage liberal education. I've said in the campaign that I want to encourage women. People should also have leisure to not be just reading and going for private tuition. This is not the way forward. In Canada, private tuition is not allowed. And the Canadians do very well. In New Zealand, it's the same. But here everybody thinks I have to give a push with the child. And this is what's happening. In fact, education is not free because you have to pay for the tuition. But the liberal education is very important. You know, the great Scottish writer who was also a distinguished and famous lawyer, Sir Walter Scott. One day a client came to his chambers. I think he had a very serious problem and he came to see him because he was a great lawyer. They asked him to wait in the library. And while he was waiting, he looked around and he saw books. The whole wall was full of books. And then he was asked to come in to meet the great man, Sir Walter Scott. And he said to him, I think I made a mistake. So Walter said, why? He said, but I was waiting for you. I looked at your library. I saw so many books, but they were on science, on philosophy, on literature. classical books, but I didn't see one legal book, not one. And you know what the Scotch replied? He said, very true, but you can imagine that after years of patient study and practice, I've already learned the methods and principles of the law, but they have to teach me. If I hadn't, I would have reached that position. But I must tell you something. If you read just legal books because you are a lawyer, you will indeed you may become a fine technician. But if you read and resort what these books you saw in the library teach you, you can venture to be an architect. Because you will have a more open mind. That is why this new volume that shows us what is liberal, the spirit of a liberal education, has found you ready and welcoming home. And we keep, sometimes you don't realize, all of us, either we were students there, or else indirectly, felt the influence, because the influence on our nation of this great college, with its unparalleled history, the tradition has stretched down the centuries. And the RCC has stood the test of time. It has produced 3 prime ministers out of 5. And lots of ministers, doctors, lawyers, lots of people who are now shining in different posts. And at the true place of learning, since its establishment, I think in 1800s, the Royal College has welcomed students of all backgrounds and communities. An example, some years ago, with a small boy, he had only one eye. He came from poor parents at the time. He was living in Belleville, but he managed to go to the Royal College. It just shows. Even from his early days, it was attracted as Governor for also students throughout the region, making Mauritius a center for liberal education. And through its large alumni network, both at home and abroad, the Royal College continues to spread the values of liberal education they receive here and stand for the qualities that will best serve our nation, because they believe in what we were taught. I mean, look at it. It has produced 15 laureates last year. This stands as a testament of its distinguished legacy of excellence. I like to think that this title, Veni Vidi Vici, I came, I saw, I conquered, historically attributed to Julius Caesar. It brings before our minds the generations of young and eager students who arrive at the gates of learning, and they can see the wide and inexhaustible horizon in front of them, which will give them, in liberal access, conquer the chosen fields of hard work, by hard work and discipline. Malcolm Richard said he was also the Royal College member. He aptly described RCC as un vrai laboratoire humain, a crucible of a larger, complex society in which this great Mauritian experience, in which different cultures, religions, languages meet to find ways of working and living together and sharing a national identity. But again, I want to emphasize, it's the liberal education that is essential. We want to steer the college's education towards that. You know, there is a great example of a former Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States called Mr. Justice Frankfurter. He was on the bench of the Supreme Court. And look at this, a younger, age 12 if I remember well, 12 years old, rise to judge in the Supreme Court in the United States writes him a letter to ask for his advice on law studies. 12-year-old girl. And what is more remarkable is that the judge, senior judge, replies to her. And this is what he said in his reply. He said, no one can be a truly competent lawyer unless he's a cultivated man or woman. And the best way to prepare for the law is to come to the study of the law as a well-read person. And this alone, thus alone, one can acquire the capacity to use the English language on paper, in speech, and it gives you the habits of clear thinking. And then he said, this only a truly liberal education can give you. And he said, no less important for a lawyer is the cultivation of the imaginative faculties, by reading poetry, by seeing great paintings, by listening to great music. This is precisely what we're saying. Therefore, as we celebrate this rich history and remarkable contribution of the RCC, it seems appropriate for me to say a few words about the future of education. Only a few words. I know I've spoken probably too long. We're at a crucial time. What do we have in Mauritius? We don't have diamond or oil or gold. What we have is our human capital. That's the only resource that we have. Really, our resource that we have. It's our people. This is why we must reform education, and I'm glad the Honorable Minister of Education is doing it right. We must uphold the fundamental principles of liberal education and cherish meritocracy and non-discrimination. I must say, despite the remarkable strides we've made since independence, 1968, we have not yet accomplished a system that works for all our young people. Too many children fail through the cracks of the mainstream education. That is why we say education for the preparation for life. There's a growing mismatch, we all know this, we've been saying it for years, between the skills imparted in schools and those demanded by the economy. And to address these deficiencies, my government is committed to supplementing our current education approach with a modèle éducation à visage humain. This vision ensures that all Mauritian children, regardless of background, are given the opportunity to develop their unique creative talents so that no child is left behind. This is what is important. I'm glad that we are at the threshold of a major revolution, and I'm glad the Minister has organized recently the Assises de l'Éducation, which is the first, as far as I remember, and maybe there were others. Wide consultations were held to look at whatever we need to do. But among other things, we have to teach the creative arts, music. I remember when I was at the Bourgeois building, there was a lady called Mrs. Tulsi who was teaching us music. I don't know whether this is there anymore. Probably not. Drama, as you mentioned. So, yeah. Suppose the creative arts. Already our initiative to reintroduce 3 credits for the grade 12 system is very important. I'm glad we did it because you can't leave children by the side. And you have late developers, we all know this. So you must give them an opportunity. One other thing I haven't discussed this with the Honorable Minister, we must give autonomy to the rectors. It cannot be that the ministry rings and transfers this rector from that rector because some people have said something. That is not wrong. The rector must have autonomy to run the school, even the schools. And the ministry mustn't interfere. Nothing to do with that. If we don't get results, then you transfer the rector. But if you're getting results, Honorable Ganga Bosat himself is an example. I didn't know him at all. And then I was looking, I like to look at the figures, results. And I saw the dominant Tagore Institute, which is in number 5. Very bad results. I said, why? The Mauritian children, but why are they getting bad results? And then I checked, and wherever you were working, I can't remember, they asked good results. And he lives in the north. I said, get him transferred to that. Let's see whether he can change things. And believe it or not, within the first year, if I'm not mistaken, he produced 2 laureates. What does it mean? And there was no difference. Nobody from the Ministry of Education said to him, you must transfer this teacher, you must do this or that. No. He was given autonomy and he produced results. That is very important. So, at the dawn, in taking these measures, as Sir Francis Bacon, I want to quote it again. Look what he said. He said, we rise to great heights by a winding staircase of small steps. And to achieve anything in life, you have to have discipline, hard work, rigor, which has characterized the Royal College UK. Nobody would get any chance. I had to do extra work because I was standing outside near the statue. If you have true and Lindsay also will remember, we were given to put uniforms. If the uniform, the trousers were too short, but you know what young people are like, they want to show our muscles. We were sent home, which has to be so many inches. This discipline is very important. And we have in our government program, if you get a chance to read, A Bridge to the Future, we seek to meet this aspiration and wish of the people for shaping a new destiny for our country. And we have underpinned the national goals: economic efficiency, social justice, discipline, and unity. The last election was one on 2 topics: unity and liberty. People wanted to be free. Totally acceptable what happened. Watching people, spying on people, inacceptable. But as we strive to strengthen the sinews of our nation and prepare ourselves for our future, the sound education will remain the crucial foundation of our nation's progress. At the dawn of this new era in the development of our country, let us, as we have done on so many occasions since independence, unleash the pent-up forces of all Mauritians, the ingenuity and the collective wisdom of our people for the nation's future. I'm sure that our nation's brightest days are still ahead of us. True to its fine tradition in fashioning the path ahead, the pupils, the students of the Royal College will continue to be in the vanguard of the service of our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Prime Minister, for those insightful and inspiring words. It is a privilege to hear from someone who has and continues to play such an integral role in shaping the history of our nation. Ladies and gentlemen, the moment we have all been eagerly anticipating is finally here. It is now time for the official unveiling of the book. May I kindly invite the Honourable Prime Minister and the authors to do the honors.